Are you ready to make history with the newest Abbott World Marathon Major? The TCS Sydney Marathon is officially part of the prestigious Abbott World Marathon Majors, and now's your chance to take on its inaugural race. Sign up and enter the ballot today. There's a reason this marathon has become Australia's biggest. Our all-new 2024 course is faster, more fun, and delivers an unforgettable experience. With hundreds of thousands of spectators lining the streets, you'll be running through one of the most iconic cities in the world. The ballot opens on Tuesday 10th of December at 10 a.m. and closes Monday the 30th of December at 11:59 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. One entry per person. Results will be announced between the 8th and 9th of January 2025. This is not a first-come, first-served system. Every application is equally considered in a random draw. So if you encounter a wait when trying to register, just come back a little later. Whether you're chasing your first start or your seventh, Sydney is the marathon you've been waiting for. Enter the ballot now at tcssydneymarathon.com. Don't wait, secure your spot now.
All right, this weekend's guest on the Inside Running podcast is the event director of the TSC Sydney Marathon, which has just become the 7th World Marathon Major. He's also a very good runner with PBs of 28.59 for the 10K and 2.16 for the marathon. He also represented Australia at 4 World Cross Country Championships. Long-time listeners would have heard him back on episode 123 and 171. Welcome back to the Inside Running podcast, Wayne Larden.
Thanks, Brady. Good to be back. How are you, mate?
I'm going well, mate. And I hope you are too in Sydney. Congratulations. You would have had a massive 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, it has been a big 3 months. It's, normally about this time of the year, we're all just chilling and taking it easy and thinking about next year. But since race day, it's been hectic. Going through the final evaluation for the TCS Sydney Marathon presented by ASICS. Took a bit of time, a bit of anxiety, waiting for the answer to know whether we got the tick or not, and finally got the tick, and I wasn't allowed to tell anybody, and so we went a few weeks of sort of hidden excitement until we got over there to TCS New York City Marathon, and that amazing presentation at the finish line of New York City Marathon was just awesome, and finally getting there and putting on the number 7 hat and the excitement around that, and the media response and the community's response around the world has been incredible. So it's been a really big few months, but whilst it's been a big few months, it's a lot longer than that, preparing for it and building it up, and getting the previous ticks and changing everything throughout candidacy. So it's been a big huge amount of work over a long period of time. But yeah, it's been an exciting few months.
And when you talk long period of time, I saw in your LinkedIn profile, you started in this role in Feb 2005, 19 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, almost 20. Yeah. So I acquired the rights in February 2005, which is when I started Pont 3. And back then there were 1,200 people in the marathon. So it took me, it took me 17 years to grow it from 1,200 to 5,300, and 2 years to grow it to 24,500. And another year we'll see soon. We'll announce that we'll probably have 35,000 on the start line next year, which will be about 42,000 registrations we'll take to get that 35,000 on the start line. So a massive amount of change in the last couple of years, and another big leap into next year, following which it'll be a bit more moderate, the progress, year on year to build it up from there. But the ballots opened this week. We've had a really amazing response to our first ballot. Good numbers, good solid numbers. So yeah, it's looking good, mate.
Open till the 30th of December too, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. 11:59 p.m. So just get in before then.
And And then it's because there was an opportunity for people that have run it the last 2 or 3 years to get a guaranteed spot. So all those out of the 35,000, I'm not sure if you can talk numbers and stuff, mate, but you can always cut this out. But out of those 35,000, how many spots are already gone?
Well, yeah, you're right. What we had was the candidacy club, of course, which we formed to encourage people to come down and run while we were a candidate race and not just wait until we made it or not. So
Yeah.
all of those people who finished in the 3 years of evaluation have a guaranteed spot in one of the first 3 years. I think the exact numbers, it's close to 10,000, I think, who applied out of the candidate program to run next year. So, you're looking at another 30 odd thousand through, ballot, travel, charity, sponsor programs and whatnot. So,
Yeah. How does your my wife asked me this question this morning when I told her I was interviewing you today. The ballot system, like, is it a piece of software or is it just like a random generator, or like how does it actually work? How do the ballot systems work for yours? And do you know how all of them work for like London and New York? Or New York's good for age, isn't it? All
they
times.
do. They're all done. I mean, Boston's sort of all time qualified mostly anyway, but they all use different systems. It's just a piece of technology. You choose the one that suits you, and it picks the people out of the box and tells you who's in. Essentially, it's all very random. So it's fair, and that's how they're pretty well all doing it. But I think they all use sort of different systems. We're doing it with Race Roster, it's, part of the ASICS apps program, and they're our registration platform. So we're working with them on that. They've been really good.
Yeah. Back to New York, like was that announcement was it the post race kind of like press conference kind of thing?
It was during the race. It was in the press centre, which is right on the finish line in Central Park. So as you can imagine, New York City Marathon have a huge media centre. Tons of media organisations in there reporting throughout the day. At their desks with their laptops with the big broadcast sort of screen on the walls, and they've got a big stage area. So we're right in the media centre, probably about 50 metres from the finish line. But yeah, nice busy area. But it was packed. There's a lot of media came in for the announcement too, which was good. So yeah, there's a lot of excitement. The coverage we got from the announcement was the most coverage we've ever had for anything, even race day. Really incredible, reach right around the world. So there was a lot of interest in it, especially in Australia. Like the television, news coverage, radio, print, specialist titles and stuff like that was amazing. So that was really great to see how excited the community was, and the non-running community, and the media. It was the first time ever in 20 years that we got the front page on the Telegraph, which was good. So those sorts of things are nice, and it's a really nice sort of sign that the TCS Sydney Marathon presented by ASICS might break out of that mold of being relevant to runners and people who are into fitness to a broader cross section of the community with that sort of media coverage. Then that can only help moving forward with some of our objectives.
Yeah, and amongst runners, I was at Chicago, like I was at Sydney and then Chicago in between the announcement happening at New York. And like so many people, when people found out I was from Australia, all they wanted to do was talk about the Sydney Marathon and it becoming a major. Like I was in this like little sub elite program and just talking to some random Americans. And yeah, they're just so many questions about the Sydney Marathon and like what the course is like, what the crowds are like, what time of the years it ran at, which we'll talk about shortly because you've changed that, which I think is a good move. But there was this kind of like bubbling level of hype amongst, kind of like that sub elite kind of area that I'm in and rub shoulders with those people, which, yeah, was really kind of weird and cool to hear people talking about your hometown when you're on not your hometown, your home country when you're on the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's incredible the interest. I've been surprised. I mean, we all know how big the Abbott World Marathon Majors are, but until you get sort of involved and now part of the family, you don't really realize how much or how big that audience is. That World Majors audience is huge, and how much and how passionate they are about those races, and how excited they are about Sydney, especially because out of, it's the first race to pass any evaluation other than Cape Town this year, and the first new race into the Abbott World Majors since Tokyo in 2013. And there's real genuine interest in Sydney as a major, but not just Sydney as a major, it's Sydney and Australia and New South Wales as a destination too, which helps a lot because, when you combine a destination event with a world major, then that's a real, recipe for success, because a lot of people, runner or non-runner, want to come and visit Sydney, right? Because it's a great city. Australia is a great country. They like Australians. Australians are friendly. So there's a real, overwhelming amount of excitement about the whole experience, not just the race experience, but coming to Sydney, New South Wales and Australia and doing Sydney Marathon. It's really great. It's really great to hear all the positive commentary sort of all over the place.
Yeah, and I think sometimes as Australians, we might take Sydney a bit for granted by how beautiful it is. Like, it's not until, like, Chicago was a great experience, great course, great crowds, but it was also just a shitload of concrete. Like, when you're running over that Harbour Bridge, down the hill from North Sydney now, that was kind of fun this year, and over the bridge, and then you loop down under the bridge. It's like, I live here. I've been to Sydney, probably 15, 20 times, but I still get blown away by how beautiful that is. And I cannot imagine what that's like for an American or someone from London or Asia or wherever to see that for the first time on race morning.
Yeah, I think we'll be surprised by how much positive sort of social media content, third party content gets generated at next year's race. I mean, hosting the Marathon Tours Age Group World Championships this year was a good thing for us, I think, because we had 1,800 of the best age groupers in the world, and these people are like micro influencers all around the world. Like they've got 5,000 followers who are all runners, and we really put on a good show for those guys and girls. Just to sort of, we wanted to make them feel like they were competing in a real world championship, and we treated them like they were in a world championship. We looked after them well, but all of those runners came away, with glowing reports about the race, how well it was delivered, the city, the course, talking about the elevation, how it just didn't feel like that. It's just, that the course is so beautiful, and yeah, it's hilly, but it doesn't feel as hilly as the elevation profile suggests. And a lot of the hills are, pretty slow, slow inclines, so you can keep a bit of pace up. But I think those guys help sort of push the message out a bit further. But you're right. I mean, Sydney, it's different to the other races. Like, it's probably most like London and New York, I suppose, because it's an experience marathon. It's about the journey and the sights, and the cities themselves and the people. It's more like those races than the Berlins and Chicagos, which are, flat, fast, well supported, but flat and fast. But ours is a beautiful course, beautiful race. And, I reckon, I argue a few brochure every now and then about this, but I reckon Sydney's got the best finish line out of all of them. He feels that the Buckingham Palace is better, but I think that the Sydney Opera House is definitely better in my opinion. But we have a bit of fun with that one. But yeah, no, it's awesome. People will love it. People will talk about it, and it's just going to grow year on year from here.
We've got London covered for sure. Unless you're really into the royals and stuff like that, there's no way Buckingham Palace stacks up at all with the Sydney Opera House. And you got the bridges there as well. Like, you see the bridge.
Yeah.
Don't forget about that. It's two for one deal.
Mate, you don't have to convince me, man. I'm convinced. Sydney's the best finish out of all of them. So
UK,
yeah, no,
just come at us. I'll take all your responses. We've got a lot of listeners in the UK, Wayne, so they'll be happy to hear that. What was the hardest bit of the criteria to achieve?
Early on we thought the finisher numbers would be the hardest piece of the criteria. Without stating a specific number or criteria point, the finisher numbers in round terms, we needed to triple our finisher numbers, which, pre-COVID, as no one in Australia had gone anywhere near that. Melbourne was the biggest for a long time at about 7,000 to 8,000, and Gold Coast sort of 6,500 to 7,500 or thereabouts, depending on the year. So we thought that would be a real problem, but and that's why we created the Candidacy Club, to try and get people down here, and with the promise of a guaranteed spot once we became a major, to boost those numbers. But as you know too, the landscape changed a little bit after COVID. All of the Aussie majors had really big fields in the half marathon, 12, 14,000. I think we had 15,000 or something 1 year in the half. There was that real bucket list, half marathon bucket list that traditional runners in Australia had, in their minds, and, alongside something like a City to Surf. So recalibrating the bucket list for the regular runners in Australia was a key tactic for us. But then, the other thing, of course, which changed after COVID, which helped us on the numbers side, was that, all of these younger people who traditionally would go to the gym to get their fitness and social sort of outreach started running. And when they came out of COVID, they wanted to do a race because they'd been training for 2 years and running, and thought, well, let's go and do a race. But they had no preconceptions. They just said, well, we're going to run Sydney Marathon. So there was another big boost. Like we had 38% and 40% the last 2 years first-time marathon runners, which is sort of unheard of. So there's a number of factors that helped with reaching that, what we thought would be the hardest thing to achieve. The other hard part of any marathon is getting course changes through, in terms of impacts to non-running communities and, governments and councils and landowners wanting to minimise footprints and, control road closure times and things like that, which is, normal. That's a normal sort of thing, and it's very difficult to make fundamental changes like we had. But because of the support we had from the New South Wales government and Destination New South Wales, and all of the agencies in government were all really behind the objective and the vision of getting the Sydney Marathon into the World Majors. So that, the numbers and the fundamental changes we needed to make to the event, in terms of the change of the start area, the much bigger footprint that we had to get to sort of iron out the course and get rid of those out and backs and, those distances we need to make in Centennial Park. That should have been really hard, but it turned out to be actually, relatively quite simple because of the support we had from government. And, we've been working with them for a long time, and they trust us. They knew if we put a plan together, we'd deliver it per the plan, as we always do. So that should have been really hard, as should the numbers, but they both became relatively easy. And all the other criteria points were just sort of tweaking things here and there. So the two big things really turned out to be not too big at all, which was great. So that sort of helped us get there.
Yeah, that's good. And on the course, like last year compared to this year, like significant, well, it didn't seem like significantly big changes when you look at a map. But I
Yeah.
felt when you ran the race, like the rhythm that you could get into, and you mentioned the hills before, it does come up when you upload it as quite hilly on your Strava and you look at the files, the kind of Strava files and things like that. But you don't really notice them, I feel, as much in this course when you take out those out and backs, because it just felt like you had a lot more rhythm on the course this year.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Like the key points from last year to this year were that, making sure we've got sort of two lanes the whole way, getting rid of out and backs and smoothing things out, and making it more runnable. I mean, obviously you can't flatten Sydney, but it definitely was, like last year I think we had nearly eight and a half kilometres in Centennial Park. And at that point of the race, you're starting to get a bit tired and you're wondering how long it's going to take to get out of this park, especially if you don't know the area. It's doing a few people's head in, but that nice little loop around Centennial was beautiful. But it just did. And, you get the feedback from the drivers too. The lead car drivers found it a lot easier to navigate. And that's a good sign, because they've got to get ahead of the runners and do sharp turns and make sure they've got enough gap and things like that. They said it was a lot smoother to drive in front of the elite pack, and that's also a good bit of feedback. But, and, runners, the participant experience tells you everything, I think. And there's an NPS model that, a lot of event organisers use to measure customer satisfaction. And we went from, in 2023, we went from an NPS, I think it was 31 to 65 this year. So we doubled our NPS. So we doubled our customer satisfaction in 1 year. Which is a really big leap, and anything over 60 in an NPS is a really great score. So that's a good sign. So the metrics tell us that, we lifted our game and improved the areas that we needed to improve, and they were all pretty happy with us, so that's good.
Yeah. Will we see more course changes next year?
We'll see a couple of tweaks. Nothing fundamental. The fundamental changes were made this year. We've managed to sort of remove a couple of pinch points that were sort of in that Piedmont area, one in Piedmont and one down at George Street. We removed those, so that's going to enable us to get a bit more flow through the start line, to get through more people in the start window, which is good because we need to cater for a lot more runners. We've got an extra hour on the Harbour Bridge and on the roads of Sydney too, so we can take more people. So we'll go from a sort of what we had this year was a 56-minute start window. It'll go up to about an hour 30, hour 45. So we've removed the two key pinch points, and that enables us to get more people through the start line, which means we can take more entries because we can get them through the road closure time period. So that will help. That'll help for the wheelchairs because there's a bit of a couple of hairy corners for the wheelchair elites this year, so it's going to be a lot smoother for them. But other than that, there's not much. Not much will change. We're really looking at how we manage the corrals at the North Sydney Oval area and see how we can make that process smoother, because that was a first for us. We went from last year, I think we had 18,000 square metres at Bradfield Park with 3 start groups to 102,000 square metres and 7 start groups at North Sydney Oval. So that was a big process change, a big physical change and a big process change for the start, which is complicated. So we want to sort of smooth that out a little bit. The other areas, the big area where we're going to focus on this year is getting the community out. It'll be our first year as an Abbott World Major. We'll be the smallest major. We'll just be behind probably Boston, perhaps, but we'll be the major that's furthest away from the key markets. So, and the biggest difference when you look at Sydney to the other majors is that thing that everyone loves about the Abbott World Marathon Majors, which is those hundreds of thousands of people on the sidelines cheering them on throughout the day. So that's an area where we're going to focus a lot of attention and budget. I think there's a good level of knowledge and awareness of the marathon now in Sydney especially, but we've got to try and harness that and get people out and think of creative ideas on ways to get them out of their house, because I think if they come out once, they'll enjoy it and they'll come out every year. And the other part to it is, as having run in Chicago, the communities at other world majors events feel like they're a part of the event and a really important part of the event, and that they have a role to play in the marathon journey of all of the runners that are out there. And I think once we get Sydney-siders to feel that, the marathon, the TC Sydney Marathon is not just about the people on the road. It's about everyone around the course, everyone within Sydney being a part of it, showcasing Sydney, showing the world, what sort of support they can give to these runners and, make it as exciting as possible for everyone. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on that between now and next year's event.
I guess because Australia doesn't, the general, population of Sydney who aren't running fans just wouldn't know that, do they? Now you're a part of that World Marathon Major family, and it's like, hey, this is what it looks like in Berlin and New York and London, and now it's our responsibility to make it look like this in Sydney.
Yeah, and there's even sort of, if you run New York City, like this year I was in one of the lead cars and I've been over to New York City many times. There's even competition between the boroughs on how well they support the marathon runners, and they all have their own little area and they all pack it out, line the courses, and I think there's that sort of within city competition between the boroughs to see how well they can support, and that's something we'd really like to encourage in Sydney and get each of the areas and have sort of different things happening throughout the course that sort of showcase the different areas and get people proud of the support that they can provide to the runners. So there's lots of ideas that we've got that we're just sort of working through what's the best way to engage that community. But I think that's the next big leap we'll make, is bringing the non-running community out to support the runners. And with more runners, we'll jump we had 20,000 sort of 700 on the start line this year. We'll have 35,000 on the start line next year. Our survey showed us that they bring 3 to 4 spectators out with each marathon runner. So with more marathoners, you get more people. But where you get real scale is when you get the non-running community out. That's sort of what we're going to focus on.
Yeah. Was the change of date to the 31st of August a move because of the weather, or is it to give you more distance between the other majors, or why was that move?
Well, it originally is to give us space from Berlin, especially. Next year, specifically, there's a German general election on the traditional Berlin Marathon date, so they had to move forward a week, which would have been on the same day as Sydney Marathon. So there was a need to move it for next year, but we thought we'd seek approval. If it goes well, hopefully it'll stay at that date, but it is about giving us a gap between Berlin and Chicago and the others. But it also helps with a bigger gap to Melbourne as well. So hopefully more Victorians will come up. And the response in the ballot so far, Victoria is very strong, actually, which is great. So why it's important too, there's a few other reasons. Weather. You remember last year it was hot. So hopefully we move into a bit of a slightly cooler period. But the other important sort of strategic factor is, the charity programs and the travel programs are a really important part of the Abbott World Marathon Majors, and their success, is important to other areas like, visitor spend and charity funds raised and things like that. Now, if we're backing up 1 week before Berlin every year, and then there's Chicago and New York just after it, the same travel agents and the same charities are involved in all of those events too, right? So we have a bit of clear air. The charities and the travel partners can focus on Sydney, then move into the full marathons in the other majors events later. So there's that period where they can focus exclusively on making Sydney Marathon charity and travel programs a success. So that's important too. So there's a number of really good reasons for the change, and I'm sure it'll go well, and hopefully we keep that date moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. You're just super unlucky, like last year with that hot wave that come through. Like pretty unlucky to get that date. What about will it have the Australian titles? Like, is that locked in for like X amount of years going forward? Because we see, I've got mates who live in the UK, and London Marathon for them is the big race, and they'll kind of get all their best national runners will rock up at London Marathon. They'll be in the elite field or on the championship line, and that's really important to them. You see the same at a lot of the American ones, like the big American names will do the American marathons. Like, is as much thought gone into, I don't know, you guys had Brett and Sinead as kind of the headliners last year, but trying to get, big, deep Australian elite and kind of sub-elite fields, and that's the one race they circle every year to be like, Sydney's the most important marathon that we have to have locked in.
Yeah. Well, we will be hosting the Australian Champs next year again, which is good. In terms of the super elite, it's a couple of weeks before World Champs, I think. So maybe not so good for the super Aussie elites. I'll be interested to hear what happens moving forward with World Athletics and where they do run marathons at World Champs and things like that, because there's been talk about potentially pushing World Champs out to some majors events and things like that instead of part of the World Championship program. That's unofficial. I don't know that for sure. If that happens, that would be good, because that would enable us to get the best Aussie marathon runners and sub-elites, or those preferred level runners to run. But it is hard to get the super elites just simply because of the timing around championships each year. So I'll announce this week a time qualified sort of program where people can register for Sydney Marathon through a time qualified sort of access route. I'm just finalising the times, and there's an allocation of spots to that. So that will help with sub-elite runners to get access to Sydney Marathon every year and not necessarily have to go through the ballot. We want to encourage Australians to run. We're increasing the Australian-only prize money pool as well, because we want Sydney to be the richest Australian race for Aussies, so that hopefully that'll bring a few more out. So there's a number of things. Yeah, like we want Sydney to be the one that they do every year, no matter what, and then with a bigger gap to Melbourne and a decent gap to Gold Coast, and people have that choice. So it's sort of all works out well.
Yeah, that Australian only prize money is really good incentive, but I feel like people just never knew it existed kind of for the last couple of years. And it's just like, is it on? Is it not on? Like it's one of those things that I'd be pumping up as much as possible. Cause I know guys in my kind of boat, I was in that lead pack with the women last year going, shit, should I keep going and finish this off to try to get some money? But I was like, I don't know if the money's there or what's the case kind of thing. So that's a huge draw card, I think.
Yeah, it's there, and we'll probably do it. We'll if you don't know about it, then we need to do a better job marketing it. So that's there. It's good money, really good money. It's more money than most Aussies would get in any other
huge.
marathon in the world. So yeah, really good incentive. So it would be good to have that depth there. And we'll support it with some money and make sure there's spots available so they can get in and encourage that and use Sydney as a bit of a breeding ground, hopefully, and that key race of the year.
Yeah, and because the course lends itself so well to like championship racing, that it's like just don't worry about your splits for a while. These are the 6 Australian guys that you think you're racing off for some cash. That would be I could see some real big battles and surges getting put in through Mrs. Macquarie's chair there to try to get some cash. It could be a great aspect of the race.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, like the times, like I say that too, don't worry about the time. Come and run Sydney for Sydney. It's the experience, But however, we had a faster winning time than New York City this year. So it's like, you can, depending on the athlete, you can actually run pretty quick on Sydney if you're prepared for it.
Oh yeah, that's that was my response to the boys. I reckon straight after the race, I was like, it's it's still some twists and turns, but if you're fit, especially like Andy Buchanan, I do a lot of running with him. He's a monster at cross country and he like skips over the hills down there in Bendigo, and like good cross country runners always make good marathoners. But I feel like on courses like Sydney, they would have no issue running quick on that. Like it's, get him there, Lardy. Here's your man. Get the Australian record holder on the start line.
Well, I
Six
was
boy.
actually I was talking to him this year about coming up and potentially pacing the
That's
men's
right.
race, and then he got the call up. So he had to go and race the Olympics. So we missed out on him this year, but I'd love to have Andy run next year. But we're out looking at all options at the moment. But definitely Andy would be one that we'd want to have there for sure.
Yeah. And so for people like behind the scenes, do you employ Derek Frood to kind of go out and find your elite field? Is that how it kind of works? Like, do you have much input as well of like, these are the names I want you to chase?
We liaise very closely on the field. There's some key people who I want to target that he'll go and talk to the agents, mainly because he's got the experience with that, and that's what they do. And that Posso Sports helps us develop the elite fields, and usually I'll target some of the locals and say, look, let's talk to these guys and girls, and I'll talk to a few of the agents who I know, the Aussie runners, mostly. But he tends to pull the international field together with a few key targets that we agree on.
Must be so hard with you spoke about the world champs and like people don't know if they're going to the world champs yet, being so close to your event, and then it's like who's gonna, go for the other majors, a bit after you as well. Like there'd be I can imagine there's a lot of emails and text messages going back and forth, like following certain leads and hot, cold, that's gone, and then you go again for the next person.
Yeah, 100%. And then all those agents that if you ever go to a world majors and you stay in the race hotel, all of the agents, they're in the one coffee shop every day, all day, just sort of horse trading their athletes with different races and agents, and it's quite amusing. But that's what happens. They'll get an offer and they'll take it to the other one, and that's how that sort of little micro industry works. But I will have a good field next year. I think now we're a major, it's going to help us attract more of the bigger name runners. I want to have a much deeper field than we have had. The last couple of years we've satisfied the criteria because that's the budget we've had. I think I've almost doubled my elite budget next year, which is good. So I want to see good, strong, deep fields sort of, throughout men, women, wheelchair men, wheelchair women next year, and really build out that element of it, and a good, strong Aussie contingent there with them. And, hopefully some of them can stay with them. Like a guy like Andy, he could win it. Like, and Brett, if they're on form, and same with the girls. If they're on form, Sydney is a race where they could be competitive in their hometown, and that always lifts people's spirits. Lifts Aussies' spirits. So I think it's definitely, if we get the right Aussies in there, they'd mix it up. But also a good, nice, deep tail of Aussie sub elites, and that would be nice to see too.
Oh, yeah. Like imagine, 15, 20, sub 220 performances by just hacks like me kind of thing, running around. You're just just making up the numbers, coming 50th overall, but you're trying to dip under 220.
Yeah. Mate, I'd love to see that. I think that'd be awesome.
And even now it is a major. Like when does an Australian ever get a chance to win a major or be in a lead pack of a major? Like it just doesn't happen. Like this could be an opportunity to get one early, like Mona, Berlin. But I don't know if it was a major back then, but I'm trying to rack my brain. Deke probably Boston. Did Deke win Boston? People are probably yelling at me now through their headphones going, yeah, you should know that. But
yeah. Yeah.
So
no, that'd be absolutely. Yeah, that's right. I mean, our Aussies, our super elite Aussies are becoming so competitive now. Like the progress of our elite marathon, runners has been incredible the last few years, and there's some real exciting, times ahead, I think, for some of our athletes. So it's a good opportunity. I'd love to see them up the front on that lead pack, right on the pace for as long as they can, and they could. I'm sure they could.
What do you put it down to? Like you've been, of course, someone in your industry keeps an eye on what's happening at the top end of the sport, and you're at the top end of the sport yourself once upon a time. Like you just get blown away by some of these times and just go, shit, it's a new world we're living in.
It's a new world. Like I don't think I'm connected close enough to the high performance side from a coaching perspective well enough to comment exactly. But I just think Aussies are competitive, and we want to be competitive. And the elite athletes have stepped up their training, and they're working harder, they're racing better and smarter. There's better nutrition, obviously the shoes, but everyone's got the shoes, so that doesn't explain all of the competitive lift or places that they're getting, but certainly some improvement to the times. But I just think it's the Aussie spirit, like they want to be up there and they want to be running fast times, so they're working harder and recovering better and progressing quicker. It's that would be my only sort of layman's terms. I have a degree in sports science, but which I haven't used for a long time. But that would be my observation.
Yeah, super competitive Aussie spirit.
Are you ready to make history with the newest Abbott World Marathon Major? The TCS Sydney Marathon is officially part of the prestigious Abbott World Marathon Majors, and now's your chance to take on its inaugural race. Sign up and enter the ballot today. There's a reason this marathon has become Australia's biggest. Our all-new 2024 course is faster, more fun, and delivers an unforgettable experience. With hundreds of thousands of spectators lining the streets, you'll be running through one of the most iconic cities in the world. The ballot opens on Tuesday 10th of December at 10 a.m, and closes Monday the 30th of December at 11:59 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. One entry per person. Results will be announced between the 8th and 9th of January 2025. This is not a first-come, first-served system. Every application is equally considered in a random draw. So if you encounter a wait when trying to register, just come back a little later. Whether you're chasing your first start or your seventh, Sydney is the marathon you've been waiting for. Enter the ballot now at tcssydneymarathon.com. Don't wait, secure your spot now.
Hey, what's the relationship with Athletes Australia? Like, they the owner of the event, and then any other majors owned by like a national federation, or is that the only one now?
I guess you could compare it to both Boston and New York, with New York Roadrunners and the Boston Athletic Association. That would be the best comparison. So, Athletics Australia were gifted the Sydney Marathon in 2001 as a legacy event of the Olympics by the New South Wales government, and we have had the license since 2005. Slight change when we moved to a major now, and Pont 3 has that license in perpetuity, which is good. So it stays with us forever as long as we're a major, and which is great. So, and you know what, I like the fact that there's money coming from the Sydney Marathon and going into the sport, and moving forward, it'll be a significant amount of money that'll be going into the sport of athletics right around Australia. And that whole point we were talking offline earlier about was that, this is Australia's marathon. It's not just Sydney's. This is Australia's Abbott World Marathon Major. And it will be contributing a lot to the sport, not just in Sydney, but right around the country through Athletics Australia. And we have a wonderful relationship with Athletics Australia and always have. They've been very supportive and obviously, rightfully proud and pleased that we have made it into the major. So it's great all round.
Yeah. Do you think it will get to a stage? Because does the London Marathon actually fund? I swear I read it in Mo Farah's book. Like he got some early funding as a UK athlete from actually the London Marathon. And yes, he ended up, pacing there and debuting there when he did go to the marathon, but it wasn't completely tied to the event that you must run our race in X amount of years. It's like, no, we have this money to put back in the sport. Here's some money to help you train and go off and achieve whatever goals you want to achieve.
I don't know. I mean, you got the foundation, which is set up with the London Marathon, and they do spend a lot of money in the community. I don't know exactly how they spend it. I definitely don't know what the deal was with Mo, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did, because a lot of the profits go back into the community through that foundation, which is great. And that's sort of on top of the charity fundraising, which is London Marathon's. I think it's the single biggest one-day fundraising event in the world, which is amazing.
Yeah, wow.
A running event can achieve that, but I'm pretty sure that's still the case. So that wouldn't surprise me. Look, moving forward, I've got visions of us supporting junior athletes and having programs where we can, nurture kids through to elite level, and just providing broader support to distance runners and whatever. But that stuff will develop over the next few years. But that's definitely something that I see as a role we should be playing in the community moving forward. So these are things that are going around in my mind at the moment, but definitely are thinking about that.
Yeah. How do you go switching off from all this? Like you used to have trouble sleeping at night, or when you put your head on the pillow, you got all these ideas flashing through your head?
Well, my mind doesn't stop. It just goes it just goes all the time. But I read at night. That's the only way I can make my mind switch. I
Yeah.
read, and just that takes me somewhere else, and then I'm able to just lower the heart rate, lower the mental function in my brain, and slow it down and be able to go to sleep. But if I didn't read, I'd have trouble going to sleep. But I'd read every night, and that's my thing to wind down. But yeah, no, my mind
You
doesn't
knock,
stop. I'm
you
always
knock
thinking.
over books real quickly too, don't you? Fiction as well? You're a fiction man?
Yeah, fiction, non-fiction, but yeah, mainly fiction. But take your mind somewhere else.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be fiction mostly. But yeah, I'd read a book a week, I reckon. A book
Yeah.
every week to 2 weeks. So, but I love it. But yeah, no, you're right. It's just how I am. You know me. We've known each other a long time, but always thinking of something.
Putting you on the spot, what are your best reads of 2024? Anything jump out at you?
No, I read a lot of Cussler and old Tom Clancy. I like those old
Yeah.
sort of spy thriller type things. Any of that genre, I'll eat it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's look ahead to 2025. It's spoken about, potentially another 15,000 people on course. The course is going to be sorted out for let's pinch points. But what are the other big challenges going to be when you put that, because it's a significant amount of extra bodies moving around that morning?
Yeah, I mean, moving people around, when you're trying to herd people, that's intrinsically difficult, no matter how good your communications are. And we did a great job with communications this year on wayfinding, on where to go and, what to expect and things like this. But people, probably less than 50% of people will read that stuff, right? And they'll just go there and follow the herd. I think managing the start for a marathon and a big marathon, I think the start is the key to setting up the event over the whole day. If you can get the start right, then usually most things will flow smoothly after that. So focusing on the start is a big area in terms of operations and course operations, venue operations. So getting that wayfinding, a little bit clearer, maybe more, more visual aids on getting people from train stations and metro stations to their correct corrals and things like this, getting people to listen and look and read documentation is important part. So yeah, getting that start right is crucial. Getting that start away on time, getting the waves precisely away on time will ensure that the event flows smoothly throughout the course, throughout the finish, after the finish. We're going to build a bridge over Macquarie Street next year to help with egress from the recovery village, because we have, that new finish line down Macquarie Street locks in people after they cross the finish line. So we're building a bridge over to help get people out, because that's been a bit of a problem as the event has grown with the previous ways to get out. Some other crossing points on the course, but just getting we're going to just be investing a lot on the course, a lot on entertainment, a lot on getting people out, and things like that. But also the other part to the TCS Sydney Marathon is that we have a very firm objective of Sydney being the most fun of all the world majors. So we don't want to wave goodbye to finishers after they cross the line. We want to keep them involved in marathon week with after parties and functions, and partnering with different bars and restaurants to have great fun things for people to do and celebrate together. And a few other ideas we're working on there that will sort of elevate that type of thing, partnering with Maryvale and groups like this and others in Sydney. But that whole participant experience is a really important part that we'll be spending money on.
Yep. What about the 10K? Like, you guys will probably be now the only major that has a additional event on the same day. Like, I know Berlin does the ice, or not the ice skating, the rollerblading the day before, and Boston and Chicago have like a 5K in the days leading in. But you guys going to keep the 10K long term?
So that's the other big change I should have mentioned before. So we will move the family run to the Saturday morning. So that will be on Saturday morning. It'll start in the city, finish on the Opera House finish line, on the marathon finish line. So we'll build that venue a day earlier. We will run the 10K next year on the Sunday, but it probably won't happen after that, because it'll just grow. The marathon will just be too big. So we can get it in next year with 35,000 on the start line, but anything beyond that, it won't work. So it'll just drop away, and it'll be the same format as all the majors. Then the family run on the Saturday morning and marathon Sunday.
Yeah, good move. And obviously, you've got good evidence of that, how it works with the other ones that are that big as well. Hey, is the sky the limit with the entries? Like we've seen Berlin and Chicago and New York, they're kind of closer to like that 55,000. Like, is that where you want to get to, or is it just like, hey, let's keep it 35 and do it well and, manage it okay?
I think, looking at the course footprint now and the venue space, the road occupancy sort of timeframes and start windows and stuff like that, we can, and getting rid of the 10K, we could easily accommodate over 50,000. But I don't have an objective to be the biggest out of all of them. I want to get to a comfortable space where we've got scale, we've got people coming out, we're having the right visitor impact, the right economic impact, but also the right participant experience. So when we reach the point where we feel we're in that sweet spot, I feel it's probably around 50. Then I don't feel like we need to be competing with London or New York for the biggest of the majors. That's not something that I want to aspire to be. I want to aspire to be a really great marathon that has a significant impact to the community, to the business community, to the city, but also delivers a great participant experience. And it's a really delicate balance to get all of those in proportion, and make sure everyone's happy.
Yeah. And final one from me, mate. Moose sent this through to me. He's the businessman of the Inside Running podcast with his shoe stores and stuff. So he sent a money question through. Like, is part of being the majors like a subscription? You kind of pay to keep your spot every year, and like how, like, without going into like certain numbers and stuff, like, was it a significant investment to be like, we want to be considered? Yes, we'll make your criteria, but we also have to, put some funds towards this to be considered.
There was a component of that. Nothing crazy, but there was a component of that. But it's the corporation. The world, each World Majors event owns the World Majors, right? So it's a sort of a company
Okay.
of six races, and we sort of become a part of that. But it's mainly the main benefits of being part of the World Majors is the collaboration and the connection of the audiences, and that also the lifting of the quality, the delivery of the event, and the profiling of the event, profiling of running, and everything it achieves. I mean, the financial rewards for us are, obvious, right? We get more runners, we get more entry fees, right? It does cost us a lot more to deliver the Sydney Marathon now than ever before. Significantly higher cost to deliver a World Majors level event. So you need that revenue from more runners, and there's obviously more sponsorship revenue. So that's for us. That's what we're focused on. They each operate independently, but they're also part of one group, that being the Abbott World Marathon Majors. But for us, we obviously benefit from more runners and more sponsors and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's worth it. Hey, I did say that was the last question, but one more. Is there conversations with the other race directors about how many majors there will be and what it will stop at? Like Cape Town's going through the program at the moment, and is it Chengdu in China? Is it just going to be we just keep adding one or two every 2 or 3 years and it gets to 20 and it loses its kind of status of special races?
No, it's fixed. It is fixed at 9. It will never be more than 9.
Oh, okay.
They don't want it to be more than 9, and the objective of the candidate program was to actually ensure that the Abbott World Marathon Majors is truly representative of the global running community. So there was no major in Oceania, there was no major in Africa, which is why we were added, and why Cape Town are in there. Chengdu's been dropped and replaced with Shanghai, which is a great race.
Okay.
But the agreement we have, and has been stated publicly, there will never be more than 9 world majors. So, that then should ensure that people, the journey's achievable. You go much beyond that, and it becomes just too, potentially not achievable for some people. So I think 9's a good number, and it enables them to actually truly say that it is a World Series. Now with Oceania and Africa, and of course you've got to have Africa, because the best marathon runners in the world live in Africa or are born in Africa. So no, it'll never be more than that, which is good. And I'm very happy that we're the first of the candidate races to actually qualify, because that's the competitive me, and I wanted to be the first one there. So that was good. So that number 7, that is a very special number for us now. So it's great.
Oh, mate, is there a question I should have asked you today that I didn't? Did I miss anything? What else do we need to know for the listeners? Get your name in that ballot before the 30th of December, 11:59. Be there for the first one. This is exciting for Australia.
Getting that ballot, because, I can tell you now that it won't become any easier after 2025 to get in. So that's just a reality we have to face. These Abbott World Marathon Majors events are getting hundreds of thousands of people wanting to run in them. So get in early. Just try and get in there as soon as you can.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Hey, thanks for your time today. Thanks for the honesty with the answers as well. Hopefully there's some stuff there that people haven't heard before. And your support of the Inside Running podcast.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Good to talk to you. Hopefully we'll see you guys up in Sydney next year.
Talking about finishes, picture it. Crossing the finish line at the world-famous Sydney Opera House, the crowd cheering, and your name forever etched in marathon history. This is your moment, and it starts today. The TCS Sydney Marathon ballot closes December 30th. Don't wait. Secure your spot at tcssydneymarathon.com and be part of history.
show love to everyone you meet. Doesn't matter if it don't come back. On the